In this episode of the Tradies Business Show, we chat with a woman about men. We speak with Jasmine Newman from Relating to Men about how tradie couples can get on better in business and at home.
Welcome to the Tradies Business Show, helping you get off the tools and into true business ownership, so you can spend more time doing the things that matter most. Now, here are your hosts, Warwick Bidwell and Michaela Clark.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tradies Business Show. And guess what? There's differences between men and women.
What?
Yes.
I don't understand what you're saying,
There is.
Michaela.
I know. We're groundbreaking stuff on this show. So I'm Michaela Clark and this is Warwick Bidwell. We are the founders of the Tradies Business Show and the co-creators of the Tradies Business Toolkit.
We didn't think that through. Like, it was a heck of a mouthful, wasn't it? Running through all of those.
It was, but we know a bit.
Yeah, about tradies and business and stuff. So, and something we like to do is get experts on the show so that we don't get found out. But today, as we said, we're talking with a woman who has spent a large part of her life actually working with women and men basically on getting on with each other and having better relationships. So she's a relationships coach. She has her own business and she's done a lot of work with this, I suppose, the differences you talk about, Michaela, between men and women and helping us just to bridge that gap and I suppose, you know, be happier, have a better life together. Well, not you and me specifically, but
Oh, that's good.
I don't think she'll ever be able to get us to sort out our differences. So joining us today at the Tradies Business Show table, I suppose, round table or is it a triangular table? I think today it's probably going to be a normal rectangular table with me on one side and two ladies on the other perhaps, but we're going to talk a bit about that. So I'm Woz, welcome to the show. I've got Michaela here with me, and on the line today is a very special guest, Jasmine Newman, who is a relationships coach. She runs a business called Relating to Men. But Jasmine, you don't just work with men, do you?
No, and good morning. I definitely work with women as well. And in fact, I started out working with women, but then I wanted to, after working with women for a long time, which was more in my training business than in my coaching business, but after working with women for a long time, I sort of realised that I needed to get a better handle on the understanding of men and men's issues and how men viewed relationships. And so then I went exclusively into working with men for a period of about 3 years.
Yeah, right. And so I guess in terms of qualifications, you are a woman. So you're fairly qualified to talk to women about women. But
Yes.
What about dealing with men? I'm getting a couple of questions in early here because I suspect that this will shift to being you and Michaela chatting. You know, a couple of women together, a man can't get a word in edgewise. But what led to you working with men?
Well, really, there was a very big shortfall in what was available for men. There's a big gap in how we understand men and the services that are available for them, and we often refer to it as the empathy gap because there's very little empathy for understanding and meeting men where men are at. As opposed to from the female prism or the female perspective. And so once I started listening to men's stories, you know, in an empathetic kind of framework where I was really sort of just being very quiet and listening to them and let them speak and then extracting from that what the actual issues were. Sort of coaching is fantastic for extracting information and for, you know, getting to the root cause of problems. And I realised that the traditional counselling model simply didn't work for men, but the coaching model did work for them because it's much more about solution focused rather than feeling focused.
And so what do you feel, and this could be one of those how long is a piece of string kind of questions, but what's the biggest misconception you think that women have about men? I'll just go the big question to start.
Can I answer that one?
No, I'm not talking to you.
Oh, right. This
talking
is
to
where
the
I
expert.
sit down and shut up.
Just because you're a man doesn't mean you're the expert
Yeah,
in this
I'm not
conversation.
qualified to talk about men.
What was it who? But look, I mean, it is a big question, and on many fronts. I think we have a lot of misconceptions about men, but one of them is that they don't talk, and they do talk, but women have to be quiet long enough to listen. Now, often when I say that,
I could not have said that and got away with it. This is the great thing about having someone like you on the show, Jasmine.
Well, as you know, with me, I don't pull any punches. But the funny thing is that when I say that, I am often shouted down by certain sectors of society. I won't mention the F word, and you know, they say, oh, women have been quiet long enough. It's time enough to speak. Well, you know, it's time for us to say our thing. But the reality is that we've been listening to women's stories for a long time, and we, you know, we've had almost 100 years of feminism and women's rights, and we rightfully rose up and met those challenges as a society. But it's time now for us to cross that bridge back to understanding men and being prepared to listen to men more in a way that you know, respects them in the same way that women expect to be respected.
And it's, if I can just quickly hop in there, Michaela. Michaela's mouth was open; she was just ready to jump in there. But you know, there's that whole thing about equality versus equity. And I think, you know, it was definitely needed. I mean, it's crazy to look back in history and just have a look at how women have been treated throughout man's history. But it's almost like with so many things with people is that the pendulum sometimes swings too far in the other direction. And I think in this case, it's not that we need to do less around that issue of you know, equity for women and everything, but I think in some cases, men have kind of been left out a bit, out of the support services. And I mean, I'm still in the midst of my own separation and divorce, and it's not an ugly one by any stretch of the imagination. But I've become much more aware of, I guess, the potential inequities that seem to be just built into the system that disadvantage men in some ways. And I don't want to turn this episode is not about men's rights, but you know, in terms of a precursor to what we're going to chat about, it's like, you know, we got to start, I think, being a bit more proactive with the way we look after blokes as a way to actually take care of women better.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting things in everything that you said there, but at the end of the day, what it comes down to is recognising that the way men see the world, and I'd like to talk specifically about that a little bit later, but the way men see the world and the way they interact with the world and society has to be respected as being of equal importance but different to women. We cannot expect men and women to be the same and to have the same experience, nor require the same approach or services. And while we're all human, much of what we do is designed around meeting the needs of women socially, and we're not providing the same mechanisms for men so that they come into society as whole functioning and you know, emotionally cared for, socially cared for.
So I guess take this opportunity now to perhaps explain that how the men see the world, because I think that is a big misconception that we have as women, that I do believe my husband and I look at things very differently. It's taken me 16 years. I've finally worked it out. So please shed some light on how men see the world, I guess, and those differences that perhaps we're not aware of.
Well, it's an interesting thing because men are by nature visionary creatures. Right, now, we talk about this it's most talked about in negative terms, you know, the way guys are checking out other women and this kind of thing, and we talk about objectification and you know, how we frame it in a very negative sense. But if you take it to the literal sense of the way men's brains work, you know, we all have the same brain, but we are wired just slightly differently. There's only minute differences, but they're important ones. And men are visionary creatures. And so when I say how men see the world as being different to women are driven more by emotions, men are driven more by vision, which creates that solution-focused outcome. So that sort of fix-it mentality. You know, men want to resolve things and solve problems rather than invest into the emotional feeling side of things. And so in relationships, you know, men often have a vision of where things are going, especially when they're in acute stages of stress. That vision becomes really narrow focused and quite small, and this applies for all of us. But when they're, you know, normal functioning, doing the day-to-day grind, they have a vision of how they expect life to be. And sometimes when, say in the case of a separation or something, when that vision is cut in half and somebody throws up a dirty great big brick wall in front of them, then they really struggle. But they're still solution focused. So they're still looking for a way to find the best way through this as easily as they can possibly navigate. They're not usually going out looking for hard or, you know, difficult.
And so I guess an issue that I had for a long time was learning that when I'm perhaps trying to tell him how I'm feeling about something, and he's not really, I think, he's not listening to me. He's not really getting it, where he's not understanding that. I mean, he's looking for the solution to the problem, not, you know, trying to be feely.
Yeah. So we have fixing problems and feeling problems. and it serves men well to understand the difference between those, but it also serves women well to understand what they're asking of a man and to be clear about that to him, and to state. And I've used this in some couples relationship coaching that I've done, but for as a woman, for you to state to your husband, you know, I want you to understand how I'm feeling about this, or what can I do to help you understand how I'm feeling about this. But is it really a feeling problem, or is it really a fixing problem? Because just as an example, if you're getting narky at him because he's coming home late, but the problem is really that he didn't fix the light bulb in the bathroom and you can't do your makeup, then is it a fixing problem or is it a feeling problem?
I'm lost. I'm just thinking, well, I'll go and replace the bloody light globe and problem solved.
Exactly, but I guess the woman would think, oh, he doesn't care about me because he hasn't fixed the light bulb. But I've asked several times and it hasn't been done. So he's not hearing me. So then I need to shout louder to get him, this is what I'm thinking, to listen, because he's not doing the action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are men and women listening to this going, to each of those points, right? That is exactly the conundrum. So women tend to invest into the story of, well, he doesn't care about me. He doesn't. He's not interested in me. He's not interested in helping me out. And we create this great big story about how we feel or how we think he feels about us. Whereas really it's just that he didn't fix the damn light bulb, right? And so, you know, he sort of goes straight into, well, here, I'll fix the light bulb and it's fixed. Yeah. But then she's still hanging on to those feelings that she's attached to that problem.
That's right.
So there's a big disparity between the way we see things, and sometimes it takes the effort to get down to the root cause of the problem.
And so this is definitely something I see show up with my Tradies Business Wingman clients that I personally work with, and a very, very high percentage of those clients are husband and wife teams. And look, a big part of the work that I do probably crosses over into what you're doing, Jasmine, and maybe I can start referring some of them to you instead so I don't tear my hair out. But there's just these mismatches between the understanding or the levels of understanding between partners, because they're doing the life partnership and the business partnership, and you're throwing money and time stress and, business risk and all sorts of stuff in there. And then, the husband's going off into man land and being very male about the way he approaches business problems and everything. And the wife often is sort of feeling like she's not appreciated or valued in the business. I've got a few clients that are going through this at the moment, and that's causing some real grating tension between them.
Yep.
How on earth do men and women work together in business and also have a marriage or a life partnership? Like, what are some of the, I suppose, some of the problems that you see, and we've talked a bit about that, but also perhaps what's some changes or awareness that people can work towards to start to change that?
One of the most common things that I find in almost every aspect of life at the moment, certainly that those of us that spend a lot of time in the online realm, is that people are making statements of fact or statements of their perception, right? And we do this in communication in relationships as well. And it's a big mistake, because it's one thing to state your claim, but it's a far more beneficial thing to ask questions with the intention of resolving or understanding or getting a better understanding. So one of the things that I do, all coaching is really asking the right questions at the right time to extract, for people to understand themselves and to get the awareness themselves about either what they've just said or the impact of what they've just said or how they're feeling, or to dive into the problem. So I often say that if you're not getting the answers you want, so in this case, if you're constantly at loggerheads and what you're doing is not working, then there's always a better question that you can be asking. So so in the case of relationships, it's, both couples should be asking of each other either, how can I help you understand this, or how can you explain this to me so that I understand it better?
And that's like nice and simple.
Yeah.
and as someone who's coached many people over the years as well, absolutely, it's about the questions that get asked. But like, how does a couple go from the dynamic they're in at the moment, like the whole coming home late and the light globe's not replaced? How do you get out of those cycles? Because we really get stuck in a rut there.
Yeah, look, they're patterns of behaviour, and they're things that we've learned over time. And so realistically, the answer to that is it's a process, okay? So everybody has to work on themselves. You can't fix your partner, right? And it's not your responsibility to fix your partner. It's your responsibility to fix yourself. But in a relationship, each person has to come into that with the same mental space. So if the problem is that the relationship is struggling for whatever reason, and you're not communicating well, then the two of you need to be prepared to address this. So the first thing is to accept that there is an issue, right? Acceptance has to be the key starting point. The second is to understand yourself a little bit better. What's my natural response or reaction mechanism? So we have three basic mechanisms that we go into: fight, flight, and freeze. Right, when we're threatened by something, and that threat can be as simple as an argument. So we either go into fight, flight, or freeze, and we have a primary mechanism of those three things that we tend to be drawn to. And so what I do with clients is get them to, just through doing some various different little bits of analysis, but we work out what their primary mechanism is. Do they want to run from an argument? That means that they're in flight, right? So they try and avoid discussing the topic. They don't want to know about it. Those people tend to, or they'll leave the room or walk out and go to the pub and have a beer rather than have to address the problem. That mechanism, that primary mechanism, is actually flight. Fight is the person who is going to stand there and argue it out until somebody loses the battle, right? And freeze are the people who just shut down and just go very introspective and kind of, it's the equivalent of a toddler putting their hands over their ears, but I don't mean to belittle them in that way, no. Because that's actually the feeling that it gives to those people. We think of it as people when they're confronted with somebody who's in freeze tend to feel like the other person is just being selfish or being a pig, or all of these words that we put around it. But the reality is they're really struggling, and they tend to, when they come out of freeze, they'll either go into flight or fight. So the process really is accepting that there's an issue, being prepared to do the work to identify what your response mechanism is, and then working on changing those patterns of behaviour. So it does take work, it's not a simple fix. But that being said, it's not always a lot of work, I can get through this sort of thing in a couple of sessions, really. And by the time you get to the fourth, fifth or sixth session, I normally do things in sort of 6-week blocks or 6-session blocks. And by the time you get to the sixth, you're completely clear of who you are, where you're heading, how you can change your patterns, and you start implementing those. And it's knowledge is power in this case.
So if you and your partner, one is fight and one is flight, so you really one's wanting to have it out and the other's driving off in the car. I mean, what's the first step there in trying to come to some common ground? Because I think a lot of couples, I know we're like that. What's the first step there into trying to bring them together to help get this acceptance and communicate the issues?
It's recognising when you're going into a pattern, right? So we all have patterns of behaviours. Humans are pattern animals, and we love patterns. We like predictability, and we are used to things being the same. We are uncomfortable when if you came home and your partner had completely moved the furniture around the house, and this probably happens in tradies' homes, your partner's completely, changed something in the home and you're uncomfortable with it, right? You weren't expecting that. It wasn't on the agenda. You're uncomfortable, right? We don't like things that are uncomfortable. So it's a matter of being aware that, that you're going into that process. And so this is why I said knowledge is power. So once you recognise what your pattern of behaviour is, or what your, more than that, what your reaction is, if you're tend to go more into fight than you are into flight, for instance, and you see that, you feel that rising in you, because there's visceral responses to all of these, right? We actually, we have posture changes, we have elevated heart rate, we have sometimes, especially for people in freeze, they'll often actually start to sweat. So there's actually, we actually have responses to these which can be identified. In people in fight will tend to lift their shoulders up. They might be clenching their fists. There's all sorts of things. So you can be aware of those. And, when you start to realise that you're in an argument and actually, God, I'm clenching my fists and my shoulders are tight. Oh, that's what Jasmine said about being in fight. If I want to fix this, I need to calm that down. And so it's just a matter of cognitive awareness and just saying, all right, well, what do I need to do? And so, I give people patterns of things to do. So, okay, you need to breathe, relax, say nothing for a moment. And so it's just a matter of creating a new pattern to go. So it doesn't stop you from wanting to do that, right? But it makes you aware that that's what you're doing. It's up to you whether you proceed along that line or not, or whether or not you're prepared to take the heat out of it and sit down and chill and go, all right, well, we actually have to resolve this. So that's when you get to like a decent point in the argument.
Yeah, and that works well where both partners or both parties have each committed to growth and that personal awareness and personal change. But what about where maybe one person has come to that awareness and thought, well, I'm not happy with the way the relationship is going, not happy with the way we're communicating in business or life, I want to change this. The other partner either, well, not outwardly against it, but perhaps is not as on board with that. Are there things that either men can do to support their women? You talked about that feeling problems and fixing problems, and is there stuff that the ladies can do to support their husbands or partners in the way they see the world, like if one person's committed to that change?
Yeah, look, overall, and I hate to generalise, but overall, women tend to invest time into, say, counselling therapy far more than what men do. But I believe that that's because the traditional counselling model doesn't really work for men. I don't blame men for that, because I don't, I completely understand where they're coming from in terms of the traditional counselling model. But so often there is one partner who has been prepared to do the work, and the other partner who isn't. So sorry, what your question really was what? How can we get women to?
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that. I would never say that. How can we get women to help men more? No. It was more around, okay, so let's say I'm the man in the relationship, and I can see that the dynamic is not great. And, we're arguing in the business, we're not communicating well at home, I can tell that my partner's not happy, my wife's not happy. How can I actually, while I'm working on myself, how can I actually support her to maybe come to awareness more, or, realise that we both need to be working on this together? Like, are there things that I can do as a man, I guess, to start with?
Well, yeah, I mean, that particularly comes down to, again, asking that it's a really valid question of, if he says to her, how can I, what can I say to you, or how can I help you understand what I'm thinking? Because women will say, well, you don't talk to me. Men do have to be prepared to talk, but women have to be prepared to listen. So, what I often say is that what I said right at the outset here is, we have to be quiet long enough to actually hear what they're saying. Men give signals in different ways to what women do. So, but if he wants to resolve an issue, he is going to have to broach that subject. There's avoidance technique that many people have adopted, but men are particularly skilled at, is doesn't work when it comes to interpersonal or intimate relationships. We have to be prepared to sometimes sort of move outside our comfort zone and expand our resilience around that as well.
So I know I touched on this earlier, but, so many women think they're not getting heard, and that's probably because we're not listening. But, I mean, when we say how we're feeling and things don't change, or they take it the wrong way, or how do we then, instead of keep trying to shout at them and bring it up all the time, how do we listen better?
Well, the more women talk about feelings, the more men tend to withdraw from the conversation because they're not. I mean, men are more than capable and have the full range of emotions. But emotional intelligence is a craft that we have to learn, and particularly with the generation that we have now, say between probably more so between 40 and 60, I would say, is much more challenging because they were raised to be stoic and not invest into feelings. And so if women ask the question, how do you see this playing out, or what vision do you have? Like, what's this going to look like when we've completed this project, or what is this going to look like if we separate? And start to ask visionary questions. What do you see in this? What vision do you have for this when this is completed, or if we don't address this? And when you start to put things in those terms, it tends to open up men's minds rather than us standing there saying, well, I feel this and I feel that, because that tends to shut men down because they're not as equipped to deal with things on that emotional level because they are more solution focused. So it's a simple matter of us rising up and just reframing things into, how do you see this? How do you see us solving this?
It was interesting that my husband came to me the other day and said, I don't need you to solve this. I don't want to know what I should be doing. I just want to tell you how I feel. And
awesome.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, wow. And then I didn't know how to respond because I'm like, well, I can't give you a solution. And because I wanted to give him, because he's going, whatever it was, I can't remember now. He's got a bad back, so it's probably going on about his back. And I'd be going, well, why don't you go to the doctor or whatever? And
men hate being told how to do stuff.
Yeah, and I realised he just wanted to say to me how he was feeling. I had no idea how to respond. I just was like, And I didn't know what to say. I was grateful he was doing it.
Look, kudos to him, right? That's a really big step. And what he's done is he's come in and he's framed his problem in a way that should be clear and should be able for you. You're more than capable of understanding that when you hear that. But women are incredibly ill-equipped to understand or to listen to men's feelings and accept them, right? And so this is the empathy gap, right? We actually have never been, we've never been schooled in being empathetic towards men's feelings because, it's a chicken and egg thing. What came first, Men were stoic and strong and didn't talk about their feelings, and now we ask them to talk about their feelings, and then when they do, then women are like, shit, what do I do now?
That's exactly how I felt. I was like, please don't start crying.
He's just talked about but I mean, we should be allowing men to cry if they choose to, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I really dismiss this whole, men must cry thing because many men simply process things in a different way. I don't cry a lot, right? I'm not a crier. And if somebody told me I should cry more, I'd probably tell them where to get off because that's just not me. And a lot of men are like that, and most men are like that. So, it's really up to women to raise their emotional intelligence as well to be able to be accepting and to be empathetic. So when somebody's expressing their emotions, there's two things that we tend to do. We either empathise if we're naturally empathetic, or we sympathise. And there's a big difference between the way the two things are heard by the other person. So sympathy is more about, oh yeah, that really sucks. Sorry, what's for dinner, right? So gee, that's really awful. I feel awful about that, but then they kind of move on. Empathy is well, thank you for explaining that to me. I understand how complex that is for you. I'm here to support you.
Mm. So,
and then let that silence be.
So sympathy is more just, yeah, okay, that, you had a bad experience, sorry about that, and just shelve it and move on. Whereas empathy is more about creating that space, if somebody chooses to express further on that. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah.
I might have just highlighted the difference between male and female communication understanding there.
No, you nailed it perfectly. But the key to empathy is to let people know that they've been heard, and that you get a feeling of what they're saying, but then be quiet and let them either speak more, and they usually will, but you have to be quiet. We have to become, I know this is kind of taboo for radio and podcasts, but you have to allow silence. You have to allow pauses so that people can have time to process then what they say. So if you're in your case, Michaela, with your husband in a situation like that, hope he doesn't mind us using him as a case study.
He doesn't listen, so he won't know.
He'll never know. Can't imagine why he wouldn't listen.
No, I can't either. So in that case, it's a matter of sitting back and of allowing him the space to recognise that actually she got that. She got a sense of that. And then he is most likely going to dive into some more, but only if you've managed to let him know that you feel him, that you've got a sense of what he's going through. And always thank people when they share from anything from the heart. Always make sure you're thankful and appreciative of that, because it's a big deal when somebody is prepared to put their heart on their sleeve. One of the things that I just want to go straight into, because it's incredibly relevant, because I know right then when I said that, put your heart on your sleeve, a lot of men just shut down, right? They just went, no, I'm so not doing that. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I don't want to be seen as being vulnerable, because we view vulnerability as being weak.
And that's,
however, it's actually an incredibly courageous act to be able to put your heart on your sleeve and to be brave enough and to be bold enough, but also loving enough for yourself and for your partner to say, you know what, I'm actually hurting over this. That's a very courageous move. It's not a sign of weakness at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, all the men that I've worked with over the years in relationships and in their businesses, often they don't want to show that because that's a sign of failure. But not only that, they feel like, and I know I've felt like this over the years as well, if we show that, then the women in our lives lose confidence and faith, and then they freak out because, well, if you're not in control of this and if you're feeling scared and all that sort of stuff, then I'm just going to spiral off into that feeling stuff, emotional overwhelm. And as guys, it's like, holy crap, what do I do with that? I mean, I'm freaking out. Now my partner's freaking out. We're really stuffed.
Yeah.
So we just...
Yeah, there's no one driving the bus anymore, It's, that's exactly what happens. So, yeah, it's a matter of respect, but... and I know it's probably a little bit un-PC to say this, but women's emotional intelligence in these cases needs to rise up to meet men's emotions that we're asking them to be emotionally intelligent in. Yeah,
it's again we'll steer clear of all of the controversy around the F word, but it's almost like men have been told they need to be open and they need to cry and they need to show their emotions and all that. And then when they do, so often, well, women, but also other men just don't know what to do with that. We haven't learned those skills of, okay, well, we've got people who are being open and transparent, but we don't have the skills. If someone says, like, we have things like, "Are you okay?" day, and that's awesome, but you ask someone if they're okay and they say no, it's like, oh crap, what do I do now?
What do I do now? Yeah, exactly. But the same is, I think that it's equally true for women. If we're expecting men to talk about how they feel, women need to learn how to empathise with men's feelings when they do share them.
Rather than sympathise and then either openly or secretly freak out because...
Rather than do what Michaela did and go, oh shit, now what do I do?
That's nice, honey. What's for dinner?
Yeah, excellent.
Can you replace the light globe in the toilet? I can't.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's these are challenges of modern relationships and of life as we know it. As we're going through the humdrum and the day-to-day grind. The relationship dynamic is shifting, and particularly when you're thinking about a tradies couple, you're talking about women generally who are pretty strong and strong-willed, and they've matched up with a man who is pretty stoic and strong, and so they're two fairly dynamic forces to be partnered with, and it's not unsurprising that they will come to loggerheads at various different points. The fact is that we have really changed in the way we live our lives, especially over the last 50 odd years. And that's a great thing. We have to adapt to it, though. We have to adapt to our environment if we're going to survive. And one of my missions really these days, in working in couples or working with people that are struggling with relationships difficulties, is improving the longevity of our relationships so that we can start to stem the divorce rates, which are astronomical, and as they're the follow-on implications for that in our parenting and in who's got the kids and who's not seeing the kids and all that kind of thing can really go into very, very difficult periods. So my personal feeling and my professional feeling is that we are better to try and work through these issues and address them, learn about ourselves, learn about why we are the way we are, to accept and appreciate who we are and what we bring to the table, and to accept and appreciate what our partner brings to the table.
So, Jasmine, for those tradie couples, there's a fair bit of stress involved with cash flow and managing staff potentially, and you throw kids in the mix and managing home life as well. Do you have any tips for, I suppose, navigating that, or how to do that better? Well,
in relation to men, there, a couple of, Michaela asked earlier on about, some of the myths and misconceptions about men. And one of the things that I hear most commonly from men is that, we often make jokes about this, but it's really not a joking matter. When a bloke comes home and he just wants to sit down and watch TV, and then, the wife or partner is at sort of like, well, you should have mowed the lawns, you haven't done the gutters, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, and we've got this like long list of to-do stuff that we want them to do. And one of the things that I hear most is that downtime for them is really important, and it's not that they're watching the footy, it's that they're quieting their mind. They're letting go of a lot of that stuff. And we live in a very, very mentally and emotionally busy life these days, far too much so. It's not sustainable. And so we have to learn to accept that quiet time and that downtime and that time where there is no talking. We have to learn to respect silence far more than what we do. So, downtime is whether that's playing golf, whether it's taking the dog for a walk, whatever. I mean, some guys do downtime by mowing the lawn, right? They like to get out and do things, but even if it's sitting in front of the TV, respect that space. And it's the same for women. Respect that space in yourselves where you're taking time to do nothing, because that lowers the cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So it lowers the cortisol levels, and it allows what's called the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in, which lowers everything, right? And it brings us down into a sense of calm. And it's only when we're in that sense of, being quiet and peaceful that we can actually create, that we actually get our creative brain engaged, but that we also create that sense of vision and this is where I want things to head. So that's really my top thing, is to respect the downtime and respect the time of doing nothing, and that follows on into everything. And I mean, we have incredibly busy lives, but we can all take, even 10 minutes out of a day for just nothing, doesn't matter whether you're watching TV, better if you're doing completely nothing at all. But we need to respect that in people rather than get narky about it.
And I guess as partners is supporting each other in how and when we do that throughout the day or the week, so that we improve the quality of our communication outside of those times.
It really is mental health first aid.
So many things come back to that. Well, Jasmine, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to chat to you again. Not many people would know that I've... and Michaela's just been interrupted. Her mobile phone's just popped up on the screen and it says husband.
I've gone, I'm not taking that right now.
She's screening that call. But,
put him on. I want to chat to him.
Yeah. I don't think you want to do that on air. Jasmine, if people want to find out more about you or the work that you do, or perhaps some of your the work that you've done in the past as well, where would be the best place for them to find out about that?
Look, I'm in a bit of a transition phase at the moment, as you know, Warwick, because we have spoken before. But so I have two sites running at the moment. So there's relatingtomen.com. And if men want to get in touch with me regarding coaching, there is a form on the page that they can fill out. And there's also my other coaching page, which is jasminenewman.com. There's no E on Jasmine, JASMINNEWMAN. And either way, or they can just flick me an email.
Awesome. Well, I know you have some great blog posts that you put up, Jasmine, and you're a fairly active writer and sharer of content. So I'll leave it at
certainly on Relating to Men, there's some prolific content on there, and some of it's pretty confronting. But if you both women and men benefit from reading my site, and it is written for men, and it is written on the stories of men. There's definitely some good reading fodder on there.
Well, thank you. I better go call my husband back and say I need a week of silence on a tropical beach for my mental health.
Jasmine said.
The expert said I need it.
No, don't spend his money. That's not a way to show a man that you love him, by spending his money.
True.
Thanks again, Jasmine.
Great to talk to you guys. That was really enjoyable. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Tradies Business Show with Warwick Bidwell and Michaela Clark. Want to get off the tools and into true business ownership? Find out how at tradiesbusinessshow.com.